session we have now is harvesting good luck or good economics. I wanted him to talk about 1 year of the Modi government. He said he'll come at it a different way. He's not going to give me a straight answer on 1 year of the Modi government. But I think this session really looks at the fact that the newspapers today leave us completely bewildered. There's a crash. There's a simultaneous report of FDI being higher than ever before. There is a tussle, and then there is the governor getting rated as the best central banker. So there's just too much information in the press that leaves you very, very confused about what's going on. Is the sentiment high? Is it starting to dip? Has it already dipped? Do we think that there's enough going on? Are we making enough of the opportunity? I feel there is nobody better placed than Dr. Ajit Ranade to walk us through deciphering the situation that we're in, the whole world of edgy Indian economics. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ajit Ranade.
Thank you. Thank you, Anu. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Thank you. Once more, please. So, I'll give you, she said I don't give straight answers. So I'll give you a straight answer right away. So then you know where I am, where I stand. So the correct answer to the question, is the glass half empty or is it half full? The correct answer to this question, is the glass half empty or half full? The correct answer is? How many of you are physics graduates? BSc or MSc physics, oh sorry, CFOs, sorry. The correct answer is both. It's a straightforward factual thing, right? If I give you a glass, it's half water and half. Don't give me Mr. Modi's answer, who at the SRCC college he said, "मैं तो समझता हूँ कि it is full of air and full of glass." Remember, full of water. That is, well, वो तो Mr. Modi का answer था. But the correct answer is, if I give you a glass full of half of 50% water, 50% empty, the correct answer is the glass half full or half empty? It is both. Right? Do you agree or not? So that's what you're going to get in the next 25 minutes. So I'm not being wishy-washy or, on one hand, the other hand, economist. So that's what it is. The answer is both. But before I do that, I want to put with Anu's permission, there's a commercial plug. I have our good friend, Mr. Kumar Swamy. Kumar, can you please raise your hands, Kumar? Here he is. He's the CFO of JK Paper and also head of strategy. And he's written a book called Making Growth Happen in India. You have enough copies for everybody? No, I mean on sale. It's a commercial plug. So it says, I have to read this. So this is a book written fairly recently, less than a year ago. So within Mr. Modi's regime, and the line which I liked, which I should read, it says that the book is an inquisitive economist lurking in each one of us, written by a non-economist. So this is, all of you have an inquisitive economist lurking inside you, and this book is how to make growth happen. So thank you I had heard about this book, but nice to see it in person and is part of your community. So what I'm going to do is, the title Anu asked me what should be the title of the session. So I said in the context, harvesting good luck or good economics, current Indian context. And of course, I did not know what the Sensex would be today. It's past 3:30 p.m., so you don't have to look at your Blackberries anymore, or the market is closed. The weekend has begun. So is there a clicker? I do have some slides. How do you go to the next slide? Sorry? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about remember the session is, and I want, the ground rules is that I really would request you and plead with you that let's make it participative and informal. So this is not a Shashi Tharoor lecture. This is going to be just an informal sort of interaction. So I would really request that we keep it in like a Q&A session. So I do have some slides to show, so if you want, we can go through some of the slides, but we don't have to. The session is it harvesting good luck or good economics? So I want to remind you a couple of stories. On, I think it was January 7th, 2009, there was a fax received in Mumbai. We are still in the age of fax, 2009. On January 7th, around, I think, 1 p.m. or maybe in the morning, 10 o'clock, there was a fax received in Mumbai. Do you know what this fax was? That's right, Satyam. So I have to constantly remember we are in the CFOs, among the CFOs. So a fax was received saying, I have committed a crime. It began with a confession. And of course, now 6 years later, I think still the case has still not reached its logical end. The reason I mention it is that the Metas thing was discovered because of a stroke of luck. So I'm going to give you the role of luck in India's economic or business life. Something happened in the Western world, which we call the Lehman crisis. Because of that, there was a tsunami, financial tsunami. Because of that, real estate prices crashed. Because of that, a bunch of people, a company in Hyderabad-based company, had to emergency rescue another real estate company called Metas. Metas is Satyam spelled in reverse. Talk about reverse strategies. So were it not for that, it wouldn't have, it's a stroke of luck. Of course, there was bad luck probably. Even the current thing in the press, I didn't want to bring it up, but sorry for bringing it up. This Mrs. Mukherjee case, actually it's 3 years old, but there was a little village in this Raigad district of Maharashtra, and this one villager, his uncle was missing, so he went to the local police thana saying that my uncle is missing, registered a complaint, and the fellow said, "Arey, theek hai, likh ke liya." In a couple of days later, he stumbled onto some sort of human bones, and then he said, maybe it's my uncle, I don't know. And then, of course, what happened is a few days later, the uncle came back. He was hale and hearty. Then they said, boss, ye kiska bones hai? And they had to take something because they had taken cognizance of the uncle's disappearance. So they had to do something about this. So then the solely thing unraveled, and even as we speak, the drama is going on. Stroke of luck. If it didn't happen, that guy stumbled onto something. Okay, if you don't believe, let me give you one more case. Have you heard of a company called Enron? So, were it not for, again, the criminal indictment in the USA, we would not have stumbled onto the good luck of finally being able to rid of this blood-sucking contract that the Maharashtra state had. There was a long shadow of Enron. This session is not about Enron, but I'm just saying that the reason it started unraveling was because of a stroke of luck again, thanks to criminal indictment in the US. And in fact, to give you a story there, the 3 whistleblowers were the Time magazine cover, if you remember, the 3 whistleblowers of Enron. Actually, one of them was no, not a CFO. Oh, let's not talk about CFO of Enron for the time. Jeffrey's killing, right? But unlike those stories, we have the story of some good luck in the context of India. So what is this good luck? So I want to just give you the example that India is a standout Asian country among our peers. I mean, forget South Asian countries for the time being because that's not really a good, useful comparison. But if you look at all of East Asia, whether it's Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, even China, India is a large country, large economy, stands out that it's the only country with a negative trade balance. Trade deficit is always negative, has been negative always. And we are a major oil importer. In that sense, we are similar to Japan, but Japan has a trade surplus. So falling oil price for India has been a de facto fiscal stimulus. But it is unlike the usual fiscal stimulus that we talk about. That means I call it without any bad side effects. So there are no side effects like upward pressure on interest rates or inflationary or increasing government debt. Oh, kuch nahi hai. So we have a fiscal stimulus without the side effect. It's like getting good cholesterol. So this will help reduce, in fact, it will help us reduce fiscal deficit because oil prices go down, so subsidies go down, so fiscal deficit goes down. It will, of course, help us decrease trade deficit because the import bill will go down from 122 billion to 88 billion or something like that. Huge, huge benefit. And of course, inflation will go down. This is a stroke of luck. You know, Napoleon used to say, what kind of a general do you want? Not just a clever or a brave or a strategist, but I also want somebody who is lucky. So this is one big luck factor. Second luck factor is falling currency. So the falling currency, which has fallen by about 4%, 5%, I think, since couple of months ago. What, 64 to 66 now, 67, 68. It's not crossed 68. 66 something. So about 4-5%. So that is like a de facto monetary stimulus. It is in fact like a rate cut. We don't want it to fall too much because remember, India is a negative trade deficit country. So we cannot afford to have the currency slipping too much. But this kind of a slippage is actually equivalent to a rate cut. So that's what I mean by the luck factor. Now these are pretty big factors. What have we done about them? What have we been? Has the luck been transferred? Have we kind of taken advantage of this? We didn't make it. We didn't influence the falling. We didn't influence this falling oil prices. I think we didn't influence the falling currency as well because it was. You can relate it to the yuan devaluation, or you can relate it to the anxiety about the US rate hike. But these are all, therefore, lucky happenings from the external world. It is easing of, how do you say, because it will increase liquidity. Your currency has slipped, so you'll need more rupees to circulate for the same amount of dollars. So it is equivalent. It is not the same as the RBI cutting rates, but it is equivalent. So in fact, now, if the rupee keeps slipping, the case for a rate cut by RBI will weaken. I mean, contrary to what my friend Subbu has said, we can have a discussion about it. But the more the rupee slips, the less the case for RBI to take action on monetary cutting, rate cutting. So in that sense, it's equivalent. We can discuss this. Unless you want to violently object right now. Sorry, Subbu, we just want to know, do you agree that a currency weakening is equivalent to a monetary stimulus? That you agree. So that is the only point right now. Later, the bigger debate is later. So the good, the bad, the ugly. So I'm saying that I don't want to go, we have limited time, so I don't want to go into all the other lucky factors. But I'm just saying from a macroeconomic point of view, the two big factors is that here's a negative trade deficit country, which is benefiting from a fiscal stimulus and a de facto monetary stimulus. For nothing, हम लोग ने कुछ नहीं किया. Without us doing anything, God has been kind. He or she has given a fiscal stimulus and has given us a monetary stimulus. Do you agree? Even Subbu agrees. So what is the good? In spite of that, the good, the bad. Now this is where the 15-month report card. I'll give you some pictures. Actually, just pictures. This is the good part. So good, bad, ugly. This is the good part. I don't know if you can read it. Morgan Stanley. Anybody here from Morgan Stanley? Nobody. So we can say anything we want about them. Anyway, they introduced this word called Fragile 5. Have you heard of this word called Fragile 5? So this was back in June 2013. They said these 5 currencies or these 5 countries are extremely fragile, extremely fragile. These 5 countries were India, South Africa, Indonesia, Turkey, and Brazil. And because that time the rupee was racing to 69, the trade deficit, current account deficit was 5% of GDP. There was a lot of panic. The government of India and Reserve Bank were like slapping all kinds of controls, and import duty on gold went up to 10%, vagara vagara. Now, 2 years later, that happened in June 2013. We are now in September 2015. 2 years later, look at what has happened. The Indian rupee is down barely minus 5% or minus whatever. South African rand minus 22%, Indonesian rupiah minus 24%, Turkish lira minus 32%, Brazilian real minus 34%. And this data is from about 10 days ago, or maybe 7-8 days ago. So this is the good part. See, the Indian rupee has been incredibly stable by comparison. We want it, of course, to slip a little bit. I just told you that 4-5% is like a de facto monetary stimulus, but we don't want it slipping by 34% to cause panic among investors. So this is the good part. Just an example from by way of a picture. This is the bad part. I don't mean these women, but you can guess what this is. Like, they're wearing some garlands made of some jewelry. So this is the inflation. Of course, symbolized by onion inflation, but we still are not able to get rid of consumer inflation. You might be reading in the press that how the chief economic advisor to finance ministry is saying that we are actually closer to deflation than inflation. Then various people in the government keep saying now there's enough time, enough inflation has come down, we need to have a rate cut, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is that consumer inflation is still not coming down. Consumer inflation is still 5-6% or higher. And in certain commodities, it's even very high. So this is the bad part. I'm not calling it the ugly part. The ugly part is this. I don't know if you read about this story from, there is a region in Maharashtra called Marathwada, or especially a district called Latur. They have quite a few districts. Anybody heard of Latur? Was, of course, about the earthquake, but that was 93. So the situation, we are just in August, end of August, September. The situation is so bad that these kids have to fetch water all day. There is no time for studies or for play. And these are kids, some of them are in 10th standard, who are supposed to be studying. But apparently, this is the situation right there, 300-400 kilometers from Mumbai. Even Mumbai city, the last bastion to face any electricity cut or power cut, or water cut, we have officially now, I believe, 50% cut, right, for commercial establishments and 10% cut for water, residential. And today, I think Pune city also has finally announced water cut. And we are just in the first week of September. We have to go until end of March or maybe June next year. So this is the monsoon aspect, monsoon dependence. So let me just, so the good, bad, the ugly, let me just quickly repeat. So the good part is the GDP, inflation, CAD data. You might say, if I said inflation was bad with the onion picture, why is inflation in this slide? But I think overall it's coming down. So this is a directional comment that GDP is on an upward trend, looks like. Inflation is on a downward trend, even though consumer inflation is still not below the RBI comfort thing, but it is downward trend. And current account deficit, which was 5% of GDP 2 years ago, is down to less than 1%. So for a country which depends on import, depends on earning its export dollars, so having a low CAD is a good thing. The bad is all these things. Sensex, so today makes me, I don't know if should we call it bad or ugly? FII inflows, which were strong, I think the last 2 months is a little doubtful. August data has come, right, Subbu? I mean, it's positive. Negative, yeah. So it was positive until April, I think. Then May it started. Yeah, so it started. So that's why it's worrying. Exports have been, by the way, export numbers have been negative for 8 months in a row. It's never happened for a long, I don't know, for 20 years, that never we had exports being negative, 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 negative. Now, of course, there's an explanation. 20% of India's exports are petrol and diesel. You know, India software services, TCS, Wipro, Infosys, Vagara, we earn something like $65 billion or $70 billion in export earnings through software, and we call ourselves a IT superpower. But we actually earn $65-70 billion by exporting petrol and diesel. We don't call ourselves petrol and diesel superpower. 20% of India's exports are petrol and diesel. So to some extent, the fact that our exports are coming down is because petrol and diesel prices are down by 50%. So that is partly explained, but it still doesn't explain a lot of other things. So I just call it the bad, it's not the ugly, but it's definitely worrisome, because if exports slow down, remember, exports create dollars, export create jobs. So exports are important to, especially India's manufacturing sector and employment growth. The ugly thing is this. The core sector growth, that is the 8 sectors, or core sectors, which are called core sectors, that growth is now the lowest in about 12 years. Credit growth is the lowest in 18 years. Profit after tax growth, quarterly numbers for India Inc. lowest in 20 years. Rail freight, lowest in about, I don't know how many years. Growth, that I'm talking about the growth rate numbers. NPAs, the non-performing assets or the bad loans in the banking sector, now close to, if you include the restructured assets and the stressed assets, I think it's something like 16%, right? 13 to 16%. Very, very high. Electricity sectors, the PLF, the plant load factor is about 51 or 55%. So these numbers are what I call ugly. So good, bad, and ugly. So I just want to leave it at that. So when I said the bottom line is that it's going to be glass half full and half empty. And I don't know if I should be, let's see. So the good economics, let me see. Okay, sorry. So that's the last slide, and then we can have discussion. So we have, Arvind, is it all about good luck or good economics, last 18 months? So the good economics should have been these things. The good economics should have had GST passage. Now we just had a member of parliament who's from the opposition party. Did you ask him, why didn't you guys help? I don't know, if I just missed that part. Did you guys ask him why? And what did he say? Or tit for tat, okay. Anyway, so GST, I think is a majorly missed good economics policy that should have happened in the last 18 months. That's why putting it as the first thing. Of course, it requires parliamentary consensus, but that's for the government to make it happen. So somebody was asking me that, how come you guys are always criticizing the government? Why don't you criticize the opposition? So the answer to that is, you have to ball to the batting side, not to the fielding side. So if the batting side ko bowling karne ka na. So the GST non-passage is primarily the responsibility of the government. Not the, of course, you can find out, opposition kyun nahi cooperate kar raha, but the floor management skills or whatever the skills. NPA resolution. This NPA problem has been lingering for far too long. There has to be some kind of surgery, some clinical, something. There are a lot of good solutions out there. As I think Mr. Tharoor said towards the end, implementation. Why didn't we just implement those ideas? In fact, this, like he said, many public sector banks didn't have MDs or chairmen appointed for months in a row. So if there's no top guy to make a decision, to take the decisions, public investment, the biggest missed thing which we have not seen yet, although they've made announcements for the railways, for the road sector, that I told you the de facto fiscal stimulus that we got from the oil gain is between 1 to 2% of GDP, which is something like between 1 to 2 lakh crores, between 1 and 2 trillion rupees. Some of it, of course, will go to meeting subsidy, various other government commitments, but certainly a big chunk of that should have gone to public investment. We are not seeing a pickup in public investment as much as we should have seen. And because that has a multiplier effect on various sectors like steel, cement, employment, labor, etc. Export incentives. The government of India announced its 5-year free trade policy in the month of April, I think, or May, where we say that in the next 5 years our exports are going to go up to $900 billion. We had the same kind of export trade policy announced in the year 2014, year 2009, where we said that our exports will reach 500 billion. We are at 300 billion. For the last 4 years, our exports have been 300 billion, 300 billion, 300 billion, 300 billion. For 4 years, exports have been largely growing at zero, just stagnating. So what is to be done? We need stronger export incentives, which are WTO compatible. But when we go to Commerce Ministry, they say, ki, nahi, hamare paas paisa nahi hai. Arey, look at the first slide. We have a de facto fiscal stimulus. Aapke paas paisa nahi hai. How can that be? And by the way, when they say export incentives, it's not actually cash going out of the exchequer. It is actually incentives where they are in the, what are they called? Export incentive schemes. There is something called MEIS and ACIS, manufactured export incentive scheme. But it's not enough. It's not strong enough. Preventing import surge. The shocking thing, I can give some statistics. I'm familiar with the numbers from copper and aluminum. 56% of India's consumption of aluminum, we are talking about Make in India, 56% of aluminum is imported. And we have major aluminum plants. Same thing with copper. More than 50% is imported. So somebody else is benefiting from the growth of India. So if our economy is still growing at 7%, 7.5%, it is getting flooded by some cheap imports. So I think that's where good economics requires some clever strategies to prevent that. Resolving and so on. It's unfair that we don't discuss agriculture in typically corporate settings, but I just want to at least flag it, that if there's one sector which has not been touched by reforms, it's agriculture. Whether it is on the input side, that is credit, fertilizer, water, or on the output side, pricing, deregulation, MSP. So good economics can be applied to that sector as well. And lastly, what I've not put here, and a topic of great interest certainly to Pramath and Anu and all, is education. So reforms, good economics applied to the education sector, because that's the largest gorilla in the room, the challenges in the education sector. So let me stop here. So as I said, I already gave you the bottom line. Is the glass half full or half empty? The correct answer is both. No doubt we have been blessed with certain good macroeconomic favorable winds, especially lower commodity prices and generally a deflationary environment, so no pressure on prices to go up. And to some extent our currency weakening has been like a monetary stimulus, but we need to do more than more than just sitting idle and trying to benefit from this lucky favorable winds globally, because we don't know. Actually, for example, oil prices, I'm not so sure if we can continue to be confident that they will remain low. What if they suddenly go up? Because now oil prices and commodity prices are no longer determined by supply and demand, they're determined by speculators. So I don't know how long this window will be there. We certainly need to at least go through this checklist. What I mean by bottom line is that we need to do, if we want to convert this into good economics, we need some action on this front. And hopefully we'll get it in the next 6 months.
Next how many months?
I think, I didn't talk about Jan Dhan Yojana, Digital India, all those initiatives kind of have long-term they're supposed to be a foundation for a long-term economic strategy. But at least some of these things, at least in the next 6 months, we should see. Of course, Bihar elections are going to be so everybody's going to wait for that. But I hope at least on public investment, the NPA resolution and public investment should get going in the near future.
I think while people make up their minds to start with questions, I want to put you on the hot seat.
Okay.
And ask you to say pick from these a couple of things without which the glass is going to be more empty than full.
Second, public investment. I feel that this, see what happened is that in the second half of the UPA rule, the focus was on consumption-led growth, and it was coming from various schemes which affected the rural economy. And of course, the paradigm also shifted towards, from what is called investment-led growth, which is what we saw in the UPA 1, to more rights-based growth. So right to food, right to information, right to education, right to work, NREGA, etc. And those rights have costs. And so it became increasingly like a fiscally supported growth, especially focused on consumption. And to some extent, the rural growth was strong, and that did help the economy achieve some level of economic momentum. But now we have consumption growth is slowing down. So the only way we can revive is through investment, and that investment is not coming from the private sector. There is very little evidence of major private sector projects coming up, at least as of today. So it has to be led by public investment. And those public investments are possible fiscally because I think we have just received in the last 12 months a good de facto fiscal stimulus. So that much of that money should go into rapidly unrolling various things like more highway construction, more investment in railways. So I guess some of that money also, we can talk separately about the agriculture sector, which is the third last point, but I feel the most important point is to revive public investment.
Right. And I want to just get a show of hands in terms of, I'm coming to the questions, but before we set off for the questions, I want a show of hands in terms of how many people still feel as bullish as they did 15 months ago? So there's like 10 hands. How many people feel, sorry? Right, so this is not because of what the government can do.
The question is not, people are not feeling as optimistic due to the internal factor. It will take time. But the external factor are impacting the country today more.
So you're
you're
optimistic. You're optimistic because what's going on in China?
No, I'm talking
Not
about
optimistic.
with China, the slowdown in their growth will impact all the production and all they have the largest capacities and all that.
No, so the reason you're feeling optimistic is because what happened in China. Is that correct?
No, he's not feeling optimistic. He's feeling pessimistic.
So global economic slowdown will definitely, world is one.
Oh, this
So
10% are pessimists.
Sorry, this is, yeah, the 10% still feel as bullish. He's explaining why the rest don't feel bullish.
Okay.
They're not feeling not bullish because of internal factors. They're feeling less bullish because of external factors.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so let me just complete these questions, right? Next set of hands. How many people feel that the reduced optimism is because of the current government and expectations not being met?
Oh, everybody. 70%, 80%.
Right.
So how many people feel that your expectations were unrealistic to begin with?
Actually, country like United States, it took Obama 2 terms to get US out of where US was 8 years ago. And now you see some green shoots of development there. And that's for US, world's largest economy and things like that. For country like India, right, expecting someone to do a miracle in 15 months, you ask a question about 15 months, that's a wrong question to ask in the first place.
Right.
So we should not be setting our targets for 15 months or 15 years.
So can I ask my last question and then I will hand over the floor to the rest of you. How many of you believe that it is not yet time for the 80% of this room to change their mood? Is it too early to change your mood in terms of what the economy holds?
But they already said, no, they changed.
No, there's a person here who's saying it's too early to judge the government.
Only one.
Just saying,
I think
how many people agree that it's too early to judge the government?
Wait, you can't contradict yourself here. The second question and third question. Second question and third question you are contradicting. Second question was, how many are you disappointed with the government? And 80% hands went up. Third question is, how many of you still like the government? 80% are going up.
Ajit, they are influenced by my answer, I guess.
I think just taking the cue from the previous, that 15 months is too early period.
That's fine. We can discuss the 15 months is reasonable or not.
No, let me just complete.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm saying is that it's not the 15 months. I think we have been waiting for quite some time. Okay, and this another 15 months have got added into it, but still it has not reached to the stage where it was kind of the expectations were set. So it's not just 15 months. I'm not talking about BJP Congress for that matter, but I'm talking about as the business community, we have been waiting for something to kick off, right? That has not happened.
But this gentleman here said that it was unrealistic to begin with to say that in 15 months we're going to have something really fantastic. That was unrealistic to begin with.
But I think 15 months is a good enough period to judge the intentions. It need not be the actions, but at least the intentions have to be there. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, my view.
Intentions. But
Right, can we now go one by one,
what-
please? I am done. Can we just go one by one? Yeah, Sonal, please go ahead.
I think what has happened is that we all had huge expectations, no doubt. But there were some low-hanging fruits which the government could act on very quickly. And that we have not seen. As you mentioned, there are more long-term priorities which are being focused on, which is very good. But some low-hanging fruits have not been touched. And some changes that have been brought also have not been thought through. So the ramifications also are quickly felt, and there's a negative sentiments which generate, MAT being one issue, MMRDA enactment, the law, it's the way it's worded, it is creating havoc in the, the industry. So I think the think through and the detailing and the implementation and the low hanging fruits is what's missing.
Yeah, good point. Yes, Sandeep.
Dr. Ranade, referring to the last slide where you said GST is good economics, which I completely agree, but the way it's being handled, 28% or whatever, the clamor for the rate and so many exclusions, interstate sales and et cetera, don't you think it's the old thing in a new package format?
Yeah, so I think I was surprised that when you said that Shashi Tharoor said that it's tit for tat, because the more charitable explanation is that the opposition party, of which Mr. Tharoor is a member, their objection was not tit for tat. They were saying that we are not happy with this version of GST because it is very different from what we had agreed upon 2-3 years ago. Okay, sir. So exactly. Acha, theek hai. So that is a legitimate concern that you are trying to bring in something called GST, but it is totally different, because if you're not going to do away with the octroys and all the other taxes, you're not going to do away with them, and you're going to give this 1% incentive to states like Gujarat and Maharashtra, because now they are under BJP's state, then it's completely undoes. So as a save us from such GST. So. But I still feel that they should have brought it to Parliament. There should have been a debate. We could have whatever this could have been thrashed in an open debate, and we should have been able to pass something. I am saying that we should have the passage of the legislation is what I feel that actually the Indian system has a genius to pass legislations. Generally, is good legislation. I mean, well cooked, shall I say? Very rarely we have done things in a half-cooked fashion. Companies Act. No, but then we amend and all that. But anyway, in general, I feel GST is an initiative which started, if I'm not mistaken, in 2002 or even before that. So we are 13 years into the debate. So there's been a lot of inputs. But it did not even come at that stage.
Ajit, we used to, as analysts, we used to say that GST will become functional on 1st April. The year is unknown. Yeah, because it's been in the running for such a long time. We have a question here from Sugata. Yeah.
So you talked about public investment. Now there is higher public finances. The government says it has capability to raise better debt. It's asked us. We've told it several times about what ails public investment, cost sharing, risk sharing, everything. But somehow it is not getting off the ground to the extent that we expected. So what do you think will unhinge this?
No, I was told one reason for this is that a lot of the files are have to be sent to the PMO. So one sort of talk that goes around is that almost 2,000-3,000 files are now stuck, because even the decisions would earlier where it was empowered for the ministers to take those decisions. So that is one theory. I don't know. I mean, the fact is that the public spending or infrastructure spending, which should have really ramped up quite a bit, has not ramped up. Of course, we are seeing some action in road, but it is not even at the same pace that we saw during Vajpayee regime. So it is of course faster than during the UPA last 2 years. I think nothing happened. So compared to that, there is progress quite a bit. But we need a kind of speed of execution which was seen in the last NDA regime. And that we are not seeing.
And you think it's a procedural problem of files getting stuck and not moving except through the PMO. So if it's a procedural problem,
for example, National Highway Authority of India, the chairman was appointed finally only recently, 2 days back.
Right. I have to move at the back. There's a question there. I'm coming.
Yeah.
Dr. Ranade. You talked about the price, the drop in the commodity prices being a huge plus for us, which it is. There is a flip side to that, which significantly reduces the tax resources for the state governments as well as the national government. What are the implications of that, and what does it do to the public investments?
So I think you are referring explicitly to the petroleum and petro product tax, right, which is a specific duty. It's not ad valorem. It's specific. Now that itself should tell you the answer. The duties on petro products on which the state governments rely a lot are specific duties. They are not ad valorem. Sales tax is, so that's what I mean. The VAT on the petro products is a specific duty, right? So they always adjust it. That's what happened. That In fact, the international crude oil prices went down, petroleum prices are supposed to go down, but they were, some of it was offset by state governments hiking the specific taxes. But I think your larger point is what will happen to state finances. So on that, remember, first of all, the 14th Finance Commission has now changed the formula that 62% of the proceeds of tax revenues are going to the state governments. A lot of the central planning, centrally sponsored schemes are now being handed over to the state governments. So in that sense, I don't think the state finances are in that bad shape. In fact, the one good, I mean, it should have been in the good slide, is that the state finances, in terms of the fiscal deficit, are actually in a pretty good shape. They're not in such a bad shape. The electricity sector is in a bad shape, but if you look at the state finances, the state government finances are not in a bad shape. Some of them actually have a fiscal surplus, a primary surplus.
Right. I have time for 2 more questions. Please keep your questions short. I have one question here, and I'll come to the back. You've had your chance.
So you spoke about public investment, on the priority list. But aren't we ignoring something very fundamental, which is agriculture?
Yeah.
Across governments, across state or center, we have consciously seen a great degree of apathy, right from the farmer suicides to the production to the dependence on erstwhile system. We don't find any radical solutions, and which is going to land the country into huge food shortage, into huge problems in the coming years and decades.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said. That's why I said that, I just feel a little sheepish, embarrassed that we have to at least put, that's why token ke liye maine last bullet point agriculture. But that one agriculture is a very big item. But just a few quick points I want to tell you. In 2006, under the chairmanship of Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, there was a National Commission on Farmers, which was set up, and they submitted a report in October 2006. It is like a blueprint for actions that are required in the agriculture sector. I don't think anything has been done about it. And this is something which is broad consensus. I think it was accepted by the government, the then government. So there is actually, if you ask me what is to be done, usme already blueprint. Just take that report and start implementing. Second, you say radical kya karenge? Radical is, we try to inject capitalism into agriculture. See, agriculture today is one of the most untouched private sector activity. It's completely private sector, right? I mean, largely, in the sense that the farmers are risk takers, entrepreneurs. Why not think of commodity cooperatives? There's one success story like Amul, but this is not a pure capitalist model. The model is that suppose you have several land holdings, you kind of aggregate them, and they become shareholders. And the shareholding is proportional to the land holding. And suppose all of them are doing, say, groundnut farms, or whatever, whichever commodity they're doing, soya. And they then form a company, and it is a corporate farming, but not in full-scale American style. Only problem is that our current law prohibits this, meaning the moment you form a company, then you are subject to excise, subject to all kinds of taxation, which makes it totally unviable. But I'm saying this radical experiment is required to inject some capitalism into India's agriculture. But there are many other ideas, actually, many other ideas. But I agree broadly that this is, this requires, and there is no one-size-fits-all for the whole country. It has to be in Maharashtra, 3% of the land, but 60% of the water goes to one crop, which is called sugar cane. Farmer suicides are all about irrigation failures, and bore well has to go 200, 300 feet down, and again no water. And it is about mostly about the cotton crop. But 200, 300 kilometers from Marathwada and Vidarbha is a region called Gujarat, where they also grow cotton, in fact, in record quantities. But we don't hear of farmer suicides to the same extent. So what is Gujarat doing which is different from Vidarbha? They are also growing cotton. They are also kind of not very water abundant. So kya fark kya hai? So we have to learn from these little experiments. I mean, it's true that farmer suicides is a problem, but I think, there are examples where cotton is grown without suicides. So it's a very big topic. I mean, I agree.
Right. One question at the back.
Sir, in your last slide on good economics, I didn't see a mention of manufacturing. I heard you say export incentives, but incentives don't overcome the problem that we are probably weak on innovation, on manufacturing, on product development, on things like that. Incentives can help sell what we are making, but if you're not making enough of the good stuff, there's no amount of incentives actually going to help. So
yeah, you see the slide, first of all, it is a PowerPoint slide, so there's only so much space. And you can only put 5 or 6 bullets beyond which you'll only get glazed eyes. And if you ask me what are the good economic policies that India should pursue, I'm sure we can collectively think about 100 things that, look at BJP manifesto. when they were fighting elections in May 2014. It's a fantastic manifesto, and I'm sure the other political parties also had an equally well thought out, collectively sort of kafi dimag laga ke. So of course manufacturing revival, if you remember the national manufacturing policy, which was formulated in 2013 or 2012, says that India's share of manufacturing in GDP should grow from 14% currently to 25% in the next 10 years. That still stands. The BJP government, the NDA government has adopted that as well. We have now a National Manufacturing Competitiveness Council, NMCC, which has listed 10 action items, including skilling, education, labor laws, ITI, adopting corporates, adopting ITI, बहुत सारे ideas हैं. So I feel, all these are very important. I just put the export thing in there because I think largely exports are related to India's manufacturing sector. So if exports are doing well, to me it means that manufacturing is also doing well. But of course, manufacturing is important.
Right. I'm going to actually close the session. We have a tea break, and it's going to give all of you more access to Ajit right outside. So please join me in giving him
Thank you very
a
much.
big
Thank you.
hand.